Hi everybody. I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit more about the fairy tale presentations because this general model is the exact model that we will be using for all of our unit projects. You will have 4 and then you'll have a final project, and each time an important part of the process is trying these ideas out with a group of your classmates and getting their feedback and allowing their feedback to shape the final project. So the first step is one you should have already completed. It's not even on this slide. It's to choose a text that you'll be using for your project and adding it to the wiki. Once you've done that, and of course you've read the text and thought about it, then you can start preparing for your presentation. So the first thing I'd like you to do is outline and plan your presentation, and do that in writing. And then, just so that I can give you credit for that part of the process, you'll go ahead and submit that to Blackboard. However, that Blackboard submission is not the end of the outline. You need to bring that to class and actually use it to guide your presentation in class. You can bring it in hard copy or on your laptop or tablet. You may also need to bring to class a copy of the fairy tale that you are writing about and any other materials that you need during your presentation. In class, I will put people who are prepared, who have brought their outlines and materials with them, into some small groups of roughly 5 students. So you're not presenting in front of the entire class, you are presenting to a small group of students. I expect that you will spend between 8 and 10 minutes per person. Now that sounds like a long presentation, but let me explain that I do not expect that you will be actually talking for 8 to 10 minutes, but rather you will talk for part of that time, and that you'll entertain questions and ideas and discussion and lead discussion and pose questions to your classmates for the remainder. So they'll be helping you reach that 8 to 10 minute mark. To start your presentation, you'll want to discuss which fairy tale you chose, its title, a brief synopsis of that, and a description of what happens in the story. If it is very short, and by that I mean like a page, you could even read it to your classmates. Remember that they have not read this fairy tale, so you will need to do a good job of describing what happens and also give them some background and context. Where did you get this fairy tale? Who collected it? Do you have any idea of how old that collection is? Is it a literary fairy tale? If so, who wrote it? Does it have many different types over other cultures? What else do you know about it? You should have done some research to give you some ideas of what to say. If you do not read the entire tale, definitely read your classmates a short passage. That way they can get a feel for how the tale sounds, and I think about a paragraph or 2 will do it. The next part of the presentation is where you are testing and further developing ideas for the written component of the project. So you were kind of saying, here's some ideas that I have at this point. I would like you guys to discuss and ask questions to help me figure out what I think, and maybe give me some new ideas, and then you're going to go write it all up for the final component of the project. So here are some ideas that you might talk about, but definitely feel free to talk about whatever you find interesting about this tale. So you might compare your tale to the definition of fairy tales that we've been working with. What a fairy tale is and all of its typical components. Does your tale fit that definition or not? In what ways, and why is that interesting? You could go through the first 4 theoretical lenses that are mentioned here because you've learned about all 4 of those. A new critic asks about the text itself, its characters, setting, and plot. A psychoanalyst asks about the unconscious fears and desires that this tale expresses. Most of the time those fears and desires are ones that are not acceptable to talk about in society, but we can talk about them in stories. Be a folklorist and ask yourself, how can we tell that this tale started in the oral tradition? Or if it's a written literary fairy tale, you can ask yourself, how did this writer mimic the patterns of an oral tale? be a historian and ask yourself, what can we tell about the time period, the society, the culture of these pre-literate, pre-printing press people who told this story based on what happens in the tale. You haven't learned about structuralism yet, but after you do, you could write about that in your written version. And we also haven't discussed feminist criticism, but you've probably had experience with that in the past in other classes. So I'm sure that you could do a good job of asking yourself, how would a feminist look at this tale? What does this tale tell us about the position of women, about ideals of femininity and womanhood, and other questions that a feminist would ask? You could also do some comparisons. Are there different versions of this tale? Are there different versions over other cultures? Has this tale been retold over hundreds of years? Has this tale been retold in TV or movie format? In which case, you could do some comparisons. I do recommend that you write some discussion questions to end your presentation. Some things that will help you get your classmates talking and get you continuing to think about this fairy tale so that you can lead that discussion. These presentations should have a teaching feeling. You are teaching your classmates about a new fairy tale so that they will have all heard more by the end of the unit. It should have a learning feel to it, that you are using this opportunity, this communal social experience, to push yourself to learn more about the fairy tales. And it should have a group, team feeling to it so that you and your classmates are working together to help you think clearly about this fairy tale. As always, let me know if you have any further questions.